Every single day, 4 billion vehicle miles are driven across American roads. 4 billion. And almost nobody driving those miles stops to ask the question that actually matters. Who is getting paid for this? Because behind every mile of smooth road you drive on, there is a supply chain, business ecosystem, and a flow of money so large and so hidden in plain sight that most people have driven over it their entire lives without once thinking about what is underneath. Today, we follow the money.
Think about your morning commute. You pull out of your driveway, you drive down your street, you merge onto the highway. The road beneath your tires is smooth, or maybe not so smooth, and you give it exactly zero thought, which is understandable. Roads are infrastructure. Infrastructure is supposed to be invisible. It works best when you never have to think about it. But here's the thing about invisible systems. Just because you cannot see them does not mean there is no money moving through them. America has approximately 4 million miles of roads. Maintaining, rebuilding, and expanding that network costs somewhere between $200 and $300 billion every single year, combining federal, state, and local spending. That money does not disappear into the road. It moves through a chain of businesses, from raw material suppliers, to manufacturers, to contractors, to trucking companies, each one taking a share of the flow. And somewhere in the middle of that chain, largely invisible to most people, sits a business that might be the most interesting link of all, the asphalt plant.
Most people have driven past an asphalt plant without knowing what they were looking at. Large industrial facility, steel drums, conveyor belts, massive silos, trucks pulling in and out constantly, steam rising from machinery that runs at temperatures most people associate with industrial furnaces. It looks complicated, and in some ways it is. But the core business model is surprisingly straightforward. An asphalt plant takes 2 primary ingredients, aggregate and bitumen, combines them at extremely high temperatures, and produces the paving material that goes into almost every road, parking lot, runway, and driveway in America. Aggregate is crushed stone, sand, and gravel. It makes up roughly 90 to 95% of the final mix by weight. Bitumen, also called liquid asphalt cement, is a thick, dark byproduct of petroleum refining. It acts as the binding agent that holds the stone together. Heat them, mix them precisely, load them into trucks, deliver them fast. Because here is the detail that changes everything about this business. Asphalt has a temperature window. It must be laid between roughly 200 and 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Below that range, it becomes unworkable. Cools, it stiffens, and an entire load becomes worthless. Which means the moment asphalt leaves the plant, clock starts. Every delivery is a race against cooling. And that clock, that small thermal window, shapes the entire economics of the business in ways most people would never anticipate.
Now let us talk about what this business actually costs and what it actually produces. Building a mid-sized asphalt plant in the United States is not a small commitment. Land in a suitable industrial location, close enough to road projects, far enough from residential complaints, typically costs between $500,000 and $2 million, depending on region. The plant itself, the mixing drum, the aggregate bins, the control systems, the storage silos, runs between $1 and $4 million for a mid-range facility. Add infrastructure, permitting, environmental compliance, and equipment, and a realistic startup investment sits somewhere between $2 and $6 million before you produce a single ton of product. That is the entry price. Now, the revenue side. A well-designed asphalt plant can produce between 200,000 and 500,000 metric tons annually at full capacity. Asphalt typically sells for between $60 and $100 per ton in the United States, depending on location, mix type, and current bitumen prices. At a conservative $60 per ton on 200,000 tons, that is $12 million in annual revenue. Gross profit margins in asphalt manufacturing typically range between 25 and 35% under normal conditions. IBS World. On $12 million of revenue, that is between $3 and $4 million in gross profit. But, and this is the part that changes the picture entirely, revenue is not profit.
Raw materials, primarily aggregate and bitumen, account for approximately 70 to 80% of total operating costs, and bitumen is directly tied to oil prices. When crude oil moves, bitumen moves with it, sometimes violently. Paving mixture producer prices surged nearly 30% in a single year during recent volatility, compressing margins that operators had spent years building. Beyond raw materials, Fuel costs for the plant itself are significant. Asphalt production requires sustained high heat. That energy bill is constant and non-negotiable. Then labor, equipment maintenance, transportation, regulatory compliance, environmental monitoring. A well-run paving operation can achieve net profit margins of 15 to 25% on projects, but that requires disciplined cost management, strong utilization rates, and favorable material pricing simultaneously. When those factors align, the business generates serious returns. When they do not, a plant that looks profitable on paper can become a cash drain quickly. This is not a business that rewards carelessness. It rewards operators who understand their numbers precisely and who built their cost structure with enough margin to absorb the volatility that is simply part of this industry.
Remember the temperature clock. Asphalt must be delivered hot, and it cannot travel far before it cools beyond the usable range. The practical delivery radius for most asphalt plants is roughly 30 to 50 miles. Beyond that distance, the product quality degrades, the delivery becomes economically unviable, and the competitive advantage disappears entirely. This creates something extraordinary in business terms, a geographic moat. An asphalt plant positioned well, near a growing metropolitan area, near major highway corridors, near government project concentrations, effectively owns its local market. Competitors cannot ship product in from 200 miles away. The $20 to $40 per ton spread between operators who own their plant versus those who purchase mix from suppliers translates to between $600,000 and $1.2 million in additional annual gross profit for a 30,000-ton operator. Own the plant, own the economics, own the local market. That geographic protection is rare in American business. Most industries face competition from anywhere in the world. The asphalt business faces competition from within a 30-mile radius. For a well-positioned operator, that is an extraordinary structural advantage. The asphalt plant is one link in a chain, and understanding the full chain reveals where the real money moves and where it disappears. It starts at the quarry. Crushed stone and aggregate are extracted, processed, and sold to asphalt producers. Quarry operators with long-term supply relationships and proximity to plants hold significant leverage in this chain. The bitumen comes from petroleum refineries, another layer of the supply chain entirely outside the asphalt producer's control. The asphalt plant combines these inputs and sells finished mix to paving contractors. The paving contractors manage the actual road construction, crews, the heavy machinery, the project coordination, the government relationships. Above them sit engineering firms that design the road specifications, government transportation agencies that fund and approve the projects, and ultimately, federal and state budgets that determine how much money flows into the system in any given year. More than 12,000 independent paving and seal coating operators serve the U.S. market, but the top 20 control less than 15% of total revenue. This is a fragmented industry, which means consolidation opportunity exists, but also means no single player dominates entirely. Value is created at multiple points in the chain, but margin, real lasting margin, tends to concentrate with the operators who control the most critical constraint. In this industry, that constraint is the plant.
Any honest look at this business requires confronting what can go wrong, and the list is real. The capital requirement is substantial and largely illiquid. A $2 to $6 million plant investment does not liquidate easily if the market turns. Equipment depreciation is significant. Industrial mixing equipment running at high temperatures and high volumes wears continuously. Maintenance is not optional. It is survival. Seasonal demand is brutal in northern climates. Plants in states with harsh winters may operate 6 months or fewer per year, generating annual revenue in a compressed window, while fixed costs run 12 months. Government spending cycles are unpredictable. Road projects depend on budget approvals, political priorities, and federal funding cycles. Industry revenue contracted in 2025 as residential demand softened, demonstrating that even essential industries experience downturns. Environmental and regulatory compliance requirements have intensified in recent years, adding cost layers that smaller operators sometimes struggle to absorb. And utilization rate is everything. A plant running at 40% capacity is a very different financial reality than one running at 80%. The business rewards operators who understand these risks before they invest, not after.
Step back from the asphalt. The road itself was never really the story. The story is what the road represents, the physical infrastructure that makes everything else in an economy possible. Goods cannot move without roads. Businesses cannot operate without access. Communities cannot grow without connectivity.
Infrastructure is the foundation that every other economic activity stands on, and the businesses embedded in that foundation, the ones supplying the materials, running the plants, laying the surface, are businesses connected to something that modern society genuinely cannot function without. The U.S. asphalt mixing plant market alone generated over $1 billion in revenue in 2025 and is projected to grow steadily through 2033 as America's aging road network requires continuous maintenance and replacement. Valuates? The next time you drive somewhere, look at the road underneath you differently. Someone quarried the stone. Someone refined the bitumen. Someone ran a plant at 300 degrees to combine them precisely. Someone drove a truck against a cooling clock to deliver the mix on time. Someone ran a crew to lay it correctly. And somewhere behind all of that, a business owner understood that the most powerful position in any industry is not the most visible one. It is the most essential one. The road looks ordinary. The business behind it is anything but. I am Mr. Max Wealth. The most durable wealth
is always built on what the world cannot move without. See you in the next one.